Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Mike Ungar. I'm an Industry 4.0 Club founder and host of today's Fireside Chat. I'm really excited this morning to welcome Terri Ghio with us. Terri is the president of FactoryEye here in North America. And just to introduce her a little bit before we get going, she's worked with cutting edge products and manufacturing companies that can make a difference for business and consumers. Terri has a unique ability to sense which products have the capability to develop into incredible opportunities and transform them into home runs. She specializes in launching new business concepts and endeavors that have a huge potential, shaping them into companies that define and set trends in the manufacturing space. As president of FactoryEye, she's expanding Magix, which is the home company for FactoryEye, global success, and further building Magic's newest product offering. So we're really glad that Terri is with us. So welcome, Terri.
Thanks. Great to be here. Good morning.
Yeah. So
Happy
Terri,
to be here from sunny California.
yeah, that's fantastic. And for our listeners, Terri, I think it's interesting. So I always like to start talking about some of your history. I don't know if our listeners are aware or people are aware, but you actually started as a rock and roll singer in your 20s and sang all over the world. So how'd you get into the music business? What motivated you there?
Yeah, so I've been singing since I was a little girl, and it wasn't singing in the choir or anything. It was singing rock and roll with local guys. So I've been singing my entire life. I, in fact, still sing. I was fortunate enough to do, as you said, a PACAF tour, which is an Air Force-based tour, where I got to sing with a group of 10 guys, and it was a 50s and 60s revival group that we did. So it was great. Being
That's
able
cool.
to entertain the troops was bang on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks for doing that. As a veteran, those sorts of shows, they matter. They really make a difference for our troops that are deployed around the world. So thanks for doing that. Um, thinking back to your days as a singer, and I don't know if this would make sense today. I know we're going to talk about your experience in leading tech startups, and that's an important element for our listeners to learn from you. But any lessons you learned from back in the day when you were a singer that you still keep in mind today as you go about your business?
Yeah, I would say that one of the main things is there's more to entertaining than just being in front of the crowd. And I think one of the strengths that I had is the ability to kind of be the producer. So instead of getting paid $500 for being on stage, we would negotiate with the location, get $10,000 by being the one to attract the crowds and take the door and let them have the bar. So I learned early that there's a lot of different ways to be successful in business, and singing wasn't the only thing that I loved to do.
Oh, thank you for that. That's really interesting. That's a great comment. I think you really speak like an entrepreneur when you talk like that. That's really cool. So like singing, and then now you're in tech. So that's how'd you get into the tech business from having been an entertainer?
Yeah, so I do still sing, by the way. Once a singer, always a singer. So, but I don't make a living off of it. And that was the big aha moment when I realized I wasn't going to make millions of dollars being a singer. I went, I better do something else. And I literally answered an ad in the paper. I answered an ad in the paper. I got lucky and kind of hitched my wagon to an up-and-coming company, and I listened. And at the time that I joined in technology, it was a rough time. We were selling televideo monitors and Dynabyte computers. So that's how long
Wow.
I've been in it. And what the challenge was is that the people that were wanting this stuff didn't have any idea how to talk to the programmers. The programmers had no idea how to talk to the consumers or the customers. So I became the intermediary. And it was really easy for me because I wasn't shy about asking stupid questions at all. Whereas the customer may have been uncomfortable, I didn't care. So I would go to the developers and ask them, how does it do this for my customer? And they would explain. I go, no, 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 English, English, and then I was able to translate that. So I really did learn early on that understanding the problem and figuring out how to solve it was the key to the success.
Well, that's fantastic. That's really a great lesson for today. A lot of engineers focus on the product when in
Totally.
fact they've got to focus on what the client's needs are first, and look at how their product can solve a problem rather than most successful entrepreneurs do that. They focus on what or tech entrepreneurs, they focus on solving a problem. But you can get in trouble if you're an engineer and become just enamored with your product, huh?
Yeah, I have to say that in more than one occasion, I can think of about 4 actually, in helping some of these startups, especially startups that are specifically run by engineers. What they wanted to get out there to the public is not what their customer would buy. So it was a piece of what they had, but some of them just had blinders on and no, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I need to put this out there. And I said, they're not going to pay for it because they don't think it's the greatest thing. So kind of helping them understand that their vision, while big, it's not going to pay the bills. So you need to pay the bills first, and then you can bring in the rest of it. Often that happens with engineers that fall in love with their concept instead of listening to what their customer needs.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, or at least what I think I hear you saying, is that you have to be careful not to over design your product.
Yes.
Because you can spend a lot of money doing that when the customer is not looking for some of those characteristics just yet. Now, maybe in the future they do, and we see that happening as a normal evolution. But you don't want to put that out there when it's not needed. It's extra expense. That's really good. So how did you get? So you got started in tech. You said by answering an ad.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. So what were some of your early successes?
So I early on realized that in order to be good at it, you had to specialize. And one of the companies that I was in specialized in retail technology systems at the time. And I sounded interesting to me. I like to shop, and so it makes sense. I like to talk to people about the problems, etc. And I kind of the first year I was with my second company, they had been selling 3 systems a year for 5 years, say. And the first year I sold 27 systems. So I was in sales. And it was easy for me to do that. I'm a problem solver, the eternal optimist. I figured out a way to help these people solve their problems, and I went to the ones that were responsive. So I got lucky early. And I also have always had a really strong mentor in every one of the companies that I initially went into. I had somebody that wanted to help me. And I definitely do that now. I constantly giving back because I was so fortunate in getting it myself.
Well, that's a great comment about mentors. And when you were in those positions, did you have to seek them out, or did they seek you out? What
kind of a combination on every one of my steps that I went in. And a couple of them were, the founder was really focused on this particular area, and I was like not so interested. But if I'm going to have him as the guy that's going to go to on the accounts with me, I think I'm going to like what he does more, because why not get the best? So I sort of adjusted my thinking to what was best for that company itself.
When you talk about a mentor today, if I'm a listener and I'm interested in finding a mentor, what advice would you have for me about who to seek out?
Well, somebody obviously that's really willing to give and to give time and to help, and somebody who is not so critical but more helpful, and in an area that you're really passionate about and want to learn is even better. And I definitely would seek them out. I always offer myself up, but I have no problem when somebody, knocks on my door helping them. And sometimes it's just a little half hour that you need a bump, or, I have a problem or something. But I would always recommend having someone who's been there, done that can help you. It may not be in your company, maybe in your world, but not necessarily in your company. LinkedIn is a great place to find those people.
That's great. And thanks for that advice. I think that's helpful. So obviously you had some early successes, and you described that as having help from a mentor. What are some of the lessons that you learned early on, maybe from things that didn't go as well as you'd liked?
I think trying to do something that was out of my comfort zone, way out. Not pushing myself a little, but something that it was so hard that it took me 3 times as long to do what it could be. So what I learned really early on is to surround myself with people that are way smarter than me and people that have a different skill set than I do. So as I became the CEO of a couple of companies, I'm not an operations person, but I had the most amazing operations people working with me because they did what I couldn't do and I did what they couldn't do. I've always partnered with people and filled in the gaps with what I don't have.
I've heard, that's a great comment. I've heard, and I'm sorry for not remembering where I heard this, but it makes a lot of sense from someone who was a really good athlete. He said, I always try to join a team where I'm the worst player. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're talking someone who's a really good athlete, right? Because I can always learn then from the others that I'm on the team with, and so I'm happy to always be the worst player on the team.
And I think team is important, Mike. Team is really important, to collaborate and share and not think you're too important or too good to learn anything.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think I think anybody that's been successful, you go back to the idea of learning, would consider themselves a lifetime learner. I like to use the analogy, for me personally, when I joined Michelin in 1984, we had one computer in the plant, and so today, obviously I retired from them a couple of years ago, but what I've had to learn in my career, otherwise you're not going to progress. And so it's one of the key, your point's right. It's one of the key learning points, and the key is to be adaptable with the ability to learn a lot of things as you go along. That's
right.
So important. So I noticed you've been involved in the fashion industry. Also, I look at your resume. So could you talk about the things that you did in the fashion industry?
Yeah, I started off actually selling software to footwear retailers. It was a very, very niche market. Then moved into fashion, and again selling in sales, selling software to retailers in order to help them manage their inventory. Really challenging. These guys have to have the insight to buy a year in advance. So talk about planning. They have to buy a year in advance and hope that the decision they made a year ago is what people will buy today when it gets delivered. All the supply chain issues and so forth that are happening now has really turned that industry on its heels. From retail, I segued into manufacturing of garments and understanding the manufacturer and the wholesaler and stuff. So it all sort of came together. Saw some really cool technologies. Some of them were too early. Fit is a challenging thing with apparel. And so seeing all the cool fit kind of things like body scanners and stuff that came out, trying to help that along, and really going through all the foundational things that are happening in order to personalize a purchase.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've seen a lot of evolution in that industry, I guess, given your history there. And I know you're not in it directly today, but what have you learned from working in that part of the business that helps you today as well?
Definitely the ability to pivot is critical. To be a company that in the early days, e-commerce was a separate actual group, a separate almost company from the retail brick and mortar. And many of the big important retailers didn't realize or didn't think about the fact that a consumer that buys in the store is the same consumer that buys online. And it was challenging to do what was needed. Well, I bought it. Can I bring it back in the store? And you couldn't. I mean, it was really hard. And so I think having open systems and the ability to pivot and listen to what's happening out there in the marketplace and be able to change what it is. You can't buy a year in advance. You can't. And I think that that's something that all manufacturing is seeing right now. They went to then just-in-time manufacturing. Well, that doesn't help either, because then you don't have enough product. So it's really a challenging industry, but I think that the great news is the kinds of technologies that we have now definitely make a difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's wild to think, when you mentioned like e-commerce was a separate business, it's wild to think today. I mean, there are companies that are almost exclusively e-commerce, and they're quite successful.
Yeah.
And that is how they sell. And in fact, you know, we talk about brick and mortar companies. How many of them now have had to adapt? You know, I'm thinking about, we have 3 small grandchildren. Okay. So I'm thinking about the baby store, and what they've done is they've downsized all their brick and mortar to much smaller, and they're doing a whole lot more online.
Yep.
They realize they need a little bit of a space available for people to come in and register and look around and select, but they're, you know, to have all that inventory in a brick and mortar doesn't make sense to them anymore.
Right. It's true. And it's still tactile, though. Retail, it has to be experiential. There has to be a reason that you want to walk in there, because it's going to be something more than you can get online. And so you have to rethink how you interact with your consumer.
Yeah, that's wild to think about that. That's really important. And it's interesting as we talk, a lot of these principles are not, can go across many industries as well.
Absolutely.
So what, you know, I was looking back at, again, looking through your resume and the things that you've done. You know, you could have easily said, I'm good, I'm done. What attracted you to, well, with your experience and all the things you've accomplished?
Believe me, I've said it a few times already, so I keep getting pulled back.
Yeah. So what attracted you to get involved with FactoryEye?
Yeah, that was an easy one. The CEO of Magic, I've worked for 3 times. So he called me out of the blue and he goes, "Are you done playing? Do you want to come back and work?" No. And he said, "I have something that could be interesting, and I want you to, you know, vet it for me and let me know." So the fact that I have so much confidence in him, he has successfully led multiple companies, and I've been a part of it, that was a no-brainer for me. Okay, let me see what he's got. Then within, I think 3 months, I realized, holy cow, this is it. This is like a total home run. This is almost the most exciting thing that I've ever been a part of, because that everything's lining up, right? Even though all the horrible things that have happened with the pandemic and all that stuff, it opens itself up to, we've got to change, which I'm all about that. I am the queen of change, you know. I love the ability to take a step back, look at things and say, how can we do it different and make it happen? I think one of the things that I have found along the way is that the strength that women bring to the market is that we're really good at change. We're really good at multitasking. Men, not as much. They like there's the street. This is where I'm going. I like where I'm at, but we're like, okay, what's new? What can I do now? And right now, at the time we're in this manufacturing big change, is like opening the door to all the cool technologies that are out there, and it's really ours to take. We can finally do what they did at the turn of the century, which dramatically changed the world with, you know, all the railroads and the oil and blah, blah, blah. We are there. We're the ones that can make that happen, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., taking control of it and using our brilliance in technology to be able to control it. This is like it for me.
So that's
Sorry,
great.
I'm really on my soapbox. I love it.
I love your passion. So when you talk about, so let's talk about, you mentioned bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. So talk about that for a moment. What levers? Why would someone want to? Let's say if I've offshored, what motivates me to bring that back to the U.S. today?
Control.
Control.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we got kind of complacent. It's cheaper over there. I don't have to deal with it. Although it was quite the headache in certain industries, not getting what you originally thought you had ordered and wait. Anyway, but people were willing to overlook that because the cost was so much better, right? And so, whatever. And now it's like, no, it's with the pandemic and with all the ships that I see docked out there and the supply chain nightmare, it was like, wait a minute. We have to take charge of this. I want to control my destiny. The only way I control my destiny is if I'm actually doing it myself, and I have to find a better, cheaper, easier way to do it. And we have that combined with everybody hears about this, the silver tsunami, of all this talent and ideas that have been running the company for so long are moving on. And so you have to do something that's more exciting for the millennials to want to be a part of it.
Yes.
They're not willing to spend what they have to spend anymore for a 4-year college degree to get them not as great of a job as they'd like. They're also been given the ability to say, I want to do something else. I don't want to do what I'm being forced to do. I want to be open. So there's all these changes, and added to that, the brilliance of the kinds of technologies that are available at a cost that's reasonable for a mid-sized manufacturer. Everything is just falling in line. We just need the talent. So we have to find a way. In fact, small thing, we would love to bring manufacturing of garments back here. Nobody knows how to sew. That doesn't exist anymore, right? Those guys are gone. So the good news is the government understands that, and if you could get through the quagmire, they have initiatives that are helping to train people, and there's passionate people out there that know how to do all of these things, and you don't have to do it the way it was done before. Erase that. Do it in a much better way.
No, it's true. I think there's no question you can manufacture here in the U.S. And you mentioned the supply chain. It's been really a rude awakening for a lot of companies to have to deal with the challenges. I was listening to one speaker today, or one presentation a couple of weeks ago, and he even said the word supply chain is dead. What he meant by that is a chain is connected. It's really more like supply network or supply ecosystem, because things have changed so much in that area. So that's pretty amazing. So what are some of the principles that you try to follow as we get into now leading a tech company like you are? What are some of the things that are important to you?
You have to be able to pivot. You have to be open to realizing that there's a better way of doing something and move quickly in order to achieve your goal, but don't necessarily change the goal. Just change the path to the goal. You don't want to keep changing where you're going, because that's not necessarily healthy. And bring people with you that can wear multiple hats, that can do different things, and that are willing and able to change some of the things that they do. And you listen to ideas. You have to listen.
So that's great. So I captured, so you got to be able to pivot. You've got to be able to move quickly, and really with not what your goal is, but how to get there, be able to change. And then you've got to have people that you work with who work with you who are able to do multiple things. And the fourth thing you mentioned is being able to listen to others. Did I capture
Yeah.
them well for you?
You got him. You got him.
We
Yes.
had we had one question from a listener that I wanted to ask you about as well. So this listener asks, this person is particularly interested in the SaaS ecosystem for manufacturing.
Hmm.
He says, or he or she says, the SaaS for manufacturing ecosystem continues to grow. What advice would you have for a SaaS startup to set themselves apart?
Well, that's a big question. So it depends. I mean, I would say that whatever the product or solution that you're selling, make sure that you focus and you target. It's much easier to verticalize something and own a market, and then you can move to something else. So then to try and be in horizontal product is sometimes a lot more challenging. And even if it's a horizontal product, market in a vertical way so that you capture one market first.
Oh, thank you for that. That's hopefully that helps answer that person's questions. Thank you for that. It's interesting as you described how you got back into FactoryEye. You mentioned that the CEO from Magic you worked for three times before, which makes me think for a moment about how important it is to maintain your network and your connections through your career. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, that's absolutely critical for sure. I would start the minute you're, again, I'm not trying to sell LinkedIn or anything, but that's been a godsend. Just being able to, I think of somebody and I go, I wonder where he is right now or she is. And I'll do a search and I go, oh, this is a guy that I can ask about this, and so being able to always give, you will get back. And so connecting with people that can help you on your journey, give you an answer because you trust them and that you're willing to actually give back to them. I think that having a great network, it makes all the difference in the world. Right now, that's one of the things that I'm passionate about is building, and I always have, building the right team for the company. So I know, I mean, with my hair, I've been around long enough to know, okay, this company is going to need this kind of a person and this person, and I'm 2 or 3 degrees of separation from anybody that I need.
Well, so that's interesting. So if I get a little bit more focused on something, so I don't know the circumstances under which you left with this person before, but can you talk for a second about any advice you might give as people, because today people move from one company to another quite normally and quite often. What advice do you have as people leave in terms of being able to maintain their relationships as they go
Oh,
out the door?
yes, so definitely make sure your job is done. And that's what I do. I'm really great at startups. I'm really great at building it. And then when it's just now coasting or evolving, it's not really my cup of tea. So I know when I'm going to be done. And I personally say that to whoever I'm working with. All right, when I achieve this, then I stay in touch with them and I'm always available for advice. As a younger person, if you're going in the company and you are wanting to achieve a goal, it is good to talk to them. Make sure you give plenty of notice that, either there's someplace you'd rather move in the company because you see something that is you're more passionate about or you feel you can bring more to the table. And if that's not available, they know you're going to be moving on. But always finish what you start. Don't ever leave on bad terms, ever.
No, thank you. That's good advice. So you talked about in one of your principles, you talked about the people you have to have around you in a startup in order to help. They got to be able to do multiple things. What are some of the skills that these individuals need to be able to flourish in a tech startup?
Being flexible and being able to listen and be a participant in the group and not be afraid to share ideas. And then again, being able to wear the multiple hats and also I think a big thing is just to say this isn't something I feel comfortable doing. It, don't wait and try to do it and then you fail or you can't do it, because maybe there's somebody else and we just didn't know you couldn't do it. We just, so it's really important to communicate and to say, gosh, I've been trying this and it's taken me now 6 hours and I figured it'd be an hour job. Okay, maybe there's somebody else that should do it. Don't wait and keep because you feel you need to make that happen. No, just communicate about it.
So do you have any example? You mentioned being able to do multiple things without, if you're comfortable sharing, what are some examples of some of the people who've worked for you and where they've been able to work in multiple areas? Can you give an example of what that might look like for someone?
Sure. There's, in marketing, for example, there's people that are great at writing, and so they come in the marketing group, and we need them to do something with biz dev, or we need them to pick up the phone and call clients and get, some feedback from them. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily part of their job. Or some of the developers and stuff. It's actually beneficial for both sides. The developer to say, well, we want you to get on a call with the client, and hopefully they're going to listen so they realize the impact of what it is they're doing for the client, not just the box that they're building. So being able to, in a pinch, jump in and do something, or also wear multiple hats as part of the go forward. I mean, we have the head of our development right now is doing demos with Nancy, and it's huge for everybody. I mean, he's like a superstar technologist, but he gets on and does demos because that's how we listen and that's how we learn what it is the customer really wants.
Yeah, Nancy's your sales responsible. Yeah, okay, thank you. So if I'm starting up a tech company, can you give me an idea? So let's suppose I've got 4 or 5 people that I can hire. What are the first 4 or 5 people that you would hire if you're starting a tech company?
So this is a challenging thing because often in tech companies, you hire who you can afford, and it's not necessarily the person you should have, because it's most critical when you're a startup to have experience that knows the pitfalls instead of somebody who's young and aggressive and anxious. They could potentially, if you had them on sales, sell something you can't deliver, versus somebody who's more senior who knows, let me make sure that this is something we can deliver. And it's a challenging dynamic. So often I encourage to get a couple of really good, you have your development team, and I would use part-time people and use people that are experienced that can give you their experience at a cost you can afford. Marketing would be one that I would do that. Potentially sales would be another one. Development is really, you need to have your core team, but you can also outsource some of it.
Well, that's interesting. I think you really, in the gig economy today, that's more and more easily done than it was even in the past. And
yep.
And now we know how to work remotely, and so you can go all over the world for some of that development talent, can't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's interesting. So I got the first folks you'd hire. You mentioned obviously you need a development team. We talked about marketing, maybe sales. Anything else that comes to mind?
Those are the core things. I mean, business development is sort of more the hat instead of sales. So biz dev, because it could be a strategic partnership that's going to make a dramatic difference for you. They can also wear the sales hat. They can also help direct the marketing. And marketing is anything from how you're reaching those initial first few customers, which is the key. Also is actually having someone who can close a deal. An ideal situation is if you have a founder who's a salesperson, because they will definitely get it closed, or somebody on your team that can get something closed, but is also adding other elements to the mix.
Yeah. So as you get moving, as you've gotten moving with FactoryEye,
Hmm.
are there any lessons that you've learned so far as you try to move, help FactoryEye grow in the marketplace?
Yeah, it's really critical to align with people that are in the industry, well entrenched, but not of an old mindset. They're ones that are really the forward thinkers, and connect with them and be a part of the ecosystem. That's very, very important. We're working right now with SESME, and when I first talked to them a year and a half ago, I had no idea how that could benefit us, and now it's huge. And then there's, a few independents that really make a difference, bringing ideas to the table and clients and so forth. And, you know, you're a perfect example of that. So really being aware of who are the movers and shakers in the industry.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting to hear your insights on that. So as you think about maybe some of the next steps for FactoryEye, if I th- without revealing anything that would be confidential, what are you thinking about for the growth of the company?
Well, we see big, big, big giant steps next year. This year we're taking kind of base hits. We're doing base hits where we think a big part of our go forward is not just the technology, which we have a really brilliant cloud-based technology that is, using data lakes and all the new cool stuff out there. So we're truly solving a problem. But on top of that, the thing that is as important is what to do with that information. So it's really important information that we're getting. We're not just getting data, we're getting information, actionable information,
Hmm.
but it's also the ability to know what to do. People are so busy that even if they have a dashboard that's telling them, your scrap is 12%. Oh, okay, what do I do? What are my next steps? So we're bringing in expertise that is going to be able to read that information, have an ongoing dialogue with our customers, be it weekly, monthly, daily if needed, in order for them to use the information to make better decisions.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's our go forward. That's our big aha.
Excellent. Um, so maybe one last question before we reach a conclusion here. If we think longer term, 3 to 5 years from now, what trends are you seeing in this space that you're in now that might be interesting for our listeners to hear?
The space that well, I definitely believe bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. is happening. Period.
Hmm.
So we will be there within 5 years for sure. We're going to be there in a much different way. I also see personalization, more automation, but with a lot of physical intelligence, not just AI, but people intelligence that can make the difference. So I see a lot of that. I definitely see millennials jumping in and saying, I can make a difference. I talked to a third generation manufacturer who had no interest in being a part of the company. And he had done his little thing and been at 3 or 4 other companies, completely nothing to do with manufacturing, is now pulled in and is so excited because he can see he can make a change. So I see millennials making a difference in the manufacturing industry.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I hope so. What a lot of things we've talked about in other venues is how important it is to continue to attract and make manufacturing interesting for today's Generation Z, millennials, Generation Z. If not, we won't be able to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. So that's a really important aspect. Thank you for that.
And more Rosie the Riveters. We're going to have a lot more women in it too.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, as we get ready to wrap up our conversation today, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
I'm more than happy to connect with anybody that's on LinkedIn that could use my help. Don't sell me. I hate that. But I'm open for people that need help or advice or a connection. You see somebody I'm connected to, I'm happy to open the door. I've been given a lot of help over my career. I'm happy to give back.
Yeah. So I guess as we parting here, I told you I wouldn't do this. I'm not going to ask you to sing, but I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that you're still following that passion of yours. That's
Oh yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
another takeaway for our audience is, pursue the things you like and don't lose them. That's an important element in life, I think, in general.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just because I don't always get paid for it, I still a little bit do. It doesn't mean I give it up. It's my passion. My other passion is helping companies, helping businesses, and making things happen.
Well, that's fantastic. So as we wrap up here, it's been a great 45 minutes talking with you. I'm Mike Ungar. I'm one of the Industry 4.0 co-founders, and we've been spending the last 45 minutes talking with Terri Ghio, who's president of FactoryEye, which is I guess, a subsidiary of Magic Software. Okay,
Right.
so it's been a great conversation. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, please join the Industry 4.0 Club. We have typically 4 broadcasts a week. Mondays, we do Women in Manufacturing at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Tuesdays, we do the future of manufacturing, focusing on a technical topic at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Wednesdays, we typically have this Fireside Chat at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And Thursdays, we focus on people, process, and culture. And again, that's at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us here on LinkedIn Live, YouTube, and Twitter. And also, or sometimes we'll be broadcasting on Clubhouse. So again, Terri, thank you so much for the time we've spent together, and I can't wait to see where FactoryEye goes in the next couple of years.
Thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure.
All right. Have a great day, and everybody else enjoy your week. Thank you very much.
Thanks.